walls are closing in, the whispers are turning into sworn accounts, and for the first time, the story Meghan Markle has controlled so tightly is threatening to collapse from the inside out. This is not another tabloid rumor. This is not another anonymous palace source muttering behind a curtain. And this time, the danger comes from people who were inside the room. People who answered the emails, managed the schedules, wiped the tears, and then walked away carrying memories they never expected to carry. And now, after years of silence, they're allegedly ready to speak together. According to multiple insiders, Meghan Markle has been left completely shaken by the sudden realization that former palace staff are no longer staying quiet. These are not one-off voices. These are multiple individuals reportedly coordinating, allegedly comparing notes, allegedly preparing to reveal what life was really like behind the carefully curated smiles and humanitarian sound bites. And the word being used behind closed doors is not concern, it's panic. Sources say the moment Meghan learned the scale of what was coming, something changed. The confidence vanished, the calm public persona cracked. Emergency calls allegedly went out almost immediately. Lawyers, crisis managers, PR operatives on both sides of the Atlantic, not tomorrow, not next week, immediately. Because this wasn't a vague threat. This was a coordinated reckoning. What makes this situation so explosive is not just who is speaking, it's what they're said to have. These former staff members are not relying on memory alone. Insiders claim they have documentation, emails, messages, notes written in real time, records that were allegedly kept not out of spite, but out of self-preservation, receipts. And in the world of reputation warfare, receipts are lethal. For years, Meghan positioned herself as the one silenced by an institution, the woman whose truth was buried, the victim of cold machinery and cruel tradition. But now, the narrative has flipped in the most brutal way possible. The people who served her, the ones with no microphones, no Netflix deals, no memoirs, are allegedly saying they were the ones silenced. And they waited because they had to, until they didn't. Insiders describe the group as seasoned professionals, palace veterans, people who understood discretion as a sacred duty, people who don't break silence casually. One reportedly worked directly on Meghan's daily schedule, seeing every demand as it came in. Another coordinated communications, witnessing what never reached the press. Another handled logistics, absorbing the fallout when expectations shifted without warning. These were not outsiders guessing. These were insiders living it. And what they allegedly describe is a version of Meghan that looks nothing like the one sold to the public. Behind closed doors, sources claim the atmosphere was relentless. Emails at impossible hours. Demands that didn't stop when the lights went out. Messages allegedly firing before dawn, stacked with criticism, urgency, and pressure. Not occasional. Routine. One insider claimed the inbox never slept, and neither did the fear of missing a demand. Former staff allegedly describe an environment where tension was constant, where one mistake, a scheduling issue, a fitting gone wrong, a detail not meeting expectation could trigger a confrontation that left people shaken. Not offended. Shaken. Some reportedly took medical leave, others sought professional help, and these are not people unfamiliar with pressure. Palace work is pressure. This, they say, was something else. The phrase being whispered is psychological warfare. Another source described it as living on eggshells scattered across a minefield, not knowing which step would trigger the next explosion. And according to insiders, these experiences weren't isolated. They followed a pattern, one that allegedly drove multiple staff members to document everything as it happened. That detail matters more than anything, because contemporaneous notes are not hindsight. They're not revisionist memory. They're evidence created in the moment, when someone already felt something was wrong enough to write it down. Legal experts reportedly describe this type of documentation as devastating if ever made public, not emotional, factual, time-stamped. And the timing of all this could not be worse. The Sussex brand is already under strain. Streaming deals questioned, projects quietly shelved, partnerships scrutinized. crashed. And now, just as momentum was slipping, this storm forms not from tabloids, not from royal courtiers, but from employees who once made the machine run. What makes this even more dangerous is the alleged legal preparation happening quietly in the background. These former staff members are not just talking to journalists. They're reportedly consulting attorneys, employment specialists, defamation experts. This is not impulsive. This is calculated, structured, designed to withstand pushback. And pushback, sources say, is exactly what Meghan's camp is preparing. Insiders claim cease and desist letters are being explored. Defamation strategies discussed. The same legal firepower once aimed at newspapers may now be pointed at former employees. But here's the problem. Threatening people who claim to have proof is a dangerous game, because once the documents come out, intimidation stops working. And then there's the irony, no one inside the palace is missing. Meghan reportedly refused to sign certain confidentiality agreements herself when leaving royal life, framing it as a stand against silencing. Now, those same principles mean she allegedly cannot silence the people who worked for her. The doors she insisted be opened, they may be swinging both ways. While all this unfolds, the palace is said to be doing nothing. No defense, no statements, no quiet interventions, just silence. And according to insiders, that silence is not accidental, it's deliberate. A decision to step back and let events unfold. A calculation that this is no longer their battle. And that may be the most devastating message of all. But because for the first time, Meghan stands alone, not against an institution, but against people who knew her when the cameras were off. People who didn't write speeches, but lived the consequences. People who are now saying the truth was never what the world was shown. And this is only the beginning. This is the aftershock, the moment where the damage spreads beyond Meghan and begins cracking everything around her, including the one person who was supposed to stand immovable at her side. Because while Meghan is allegedly scrambling, calling lawyers, locking down narratives, and preparing for battle, sources say Prince Harry is facing a reckoning of his own, and it's tearing straight through the heart of their marriage. Insiders claim Harry has been thrown into an impossible position. On one side, his wife, demanding loyalty, unity, and unbreakable front. On the other, former staff members he worked with, people he knew personally, people who reportedly served him faithfully and are now saying they were hurt, silenced, and left behind. And the question being whispered in royal circles is brutal. What did Harry know, and when did he know it? Because if even a fraction of the alleged incidents occurred as described, Harry was there, in the house, in the meetings, within earshot. And suddenly, the mental health champion, the man who lectures the world about compassion and workplace well-being, is under an uncomfortable spotlight of his own. Sources suggest Harry's response has not been as aggressive as Meghan's. Where she allegedly favors legal pressure and narrative warfare, Harry is said to lean toward conciliation, listening, acknowledging, maybe even apologizing. And that difference, insiders claim, has ignited explosive tension behind closed doors. One source described recent conversations between the couple as cold and transactional, no warmth, no reassurance, just logistics, strategy, damage control. Another claimed Meghan was furious to learn Harry had privately reached out to former staff members, an act she allegedly saw as betrayal rather than empathy. For Harry, this isn't just a PR crisis, it's a moral one. Former employees are reportedly questioning why he stayed silent for so long, why someone who speaks endlessly about kindness never acknowledged what they say they endured. One insider claimed a former staff member felt particularly wounded by Harry's silence, not angry, but disappointed. And disappointment cuts deeper. That disappointment is now bleeding outward, eroding what little goodwill Harry still had left in royal circles. His attempts to reconnect, to smooth things over, have allegedly been met with skepticism. Some reportedly believe his outreach is less about concern and more about information gathering for Meghan's legal team. One response, according to sources, was blunt: too little, too late. And while Harry struggles, the palace watches, unmoved. No statements, no defense, no quiet briefings to soften the blow. The institution that once absorbed scandals to protect its own has drawn a hard line. Insiders describe the mood inside palace walls as detached, almost resigned. The thinking, according to one source, is simple: they made their choices. This silence speaks louder than any press release ever could. For years, the palace endured accusations accusations without response, claims of cruelty, racism, cold indifference. They absorbed it all. But now, as former staff prepare to speak, the palace has chosen not to intervene, not to shield, not to protect. And that absence of protection may be the most devastating signal yet. Behind the scenes, the long-buried bullying investigation has returned to the center of the storm. That report, commissioned, completed, and then locked away, allegedly contains testimony from some of the very people now preparing to speak publicly. And pressure to release it is growing by the day. Some advisors reportedly argue transparency is inevitable. Others warn releasing internal findings could open the floodgates to legal exposure. But one thing is clear, the longer former staff speak, the harder it becomes to justify keeping that report sealed. And if it ever sees daylight, the narrative could shift permanently. Beyond reputational damage, the financial consequences are beginning to loom like a storm cloud Meghan cannot PR her way out of. Legal experts reportedly warn that coordinated testimony backed by contemporaneous documentation is the strongest possible foundation for civil action. Employment claims, emotional distress, hostile work environment. These are not symbolic accusations. They carry real monetary weight. Defense alone could cost millions. Judgments, if they come, could be catastrophic. And then there's the business fallout. Streaming executives, sponsors, and brand partners are watching closely. Meghan's ventures rely on one fragile asset above all else: her image. An image built on victimhood, advocacy, and moral authority. If credible allegations flip that image on its head, the brand doesn't wobble. It collapses. Sources suggest potential deals have already stalled. Conversations paused, decisions delayed, not canceled yet. But hesitation is the kiss of death in commercial partnerships. Nobody wants to bet on a figure standing at the edge of reputational freefall. This is what makes the situation so uniquely dangerous. Meghan cannot fully fight back without amplifying the allegations. She cannot fully stay silent without appearing cornered. Every move risks confirming something she desperately wants to deny. And control, the thing she has always mastered, has slipped through her fingers. Former staff allegedly chose the timing, chose coordination, chose documentation. They seized the narrative before Meghan could shape it. And for someone who has always dictated the terms of engagement, reacting instead of leading is a profound loss of power. Public reaction remains split fiercely. Loyal supporters dismiss the claims as another coordinated attack. Critics see confirmation of long-held suspicions. But the middle ground, the undecided audience, is where this battle will be won or lost. And that audience listens closely to patterns, not slogans. One accuser can be dismissed, two can be doubted. Four or more, from different roles, telling similar stories with documentation, that's when the ground starts to shift. Crisis experts warn of a tipping point. The moment when silence becomes more dangerous than speaking, when additional voices feel safe enough to come forward. Sources suggest more former staff are watching carefully, waiting to see how the first wave is treated. If retaliation comes, they may stay quiet. If credibility holds, the floodgates could open. History is not kind to powerful figures facing coordinated employee allegations. The pattern is grimly familiar: denial, escalation, corroboration, collapse. Whether Meghan follows that trajectory remains to be seen, but the parallels are impossible to ignore. And the irony hanging over all of this is almost unbearable. A woman who accused the palace of silencing her now allegedly stands accused of trying to silence others. A self-proclaimed advocate for the mistreated now faces claims from people who say they were mistreated by her. Two narratives cannot coexist. One must fall. The question is not whether this moment matters, it's whether it marks the beginning of a reckoning, or just another chapter in an endless war of competing truths. The former staff have made their move. Meghan is scrambling, Harry is conflicted, the palace is silent, and the world is watching, not for speeches, not for statements, but for proof. Because this time, the story isn't being told by a duchess with a microphone, it's being told by the people who were there when the cameras were off.